the Small Interview Project, I'll be talking to Senator Kate Lundy, who's the A.C.T. Senator.
Senator Kate Lundy, thank you very much for joining me today on the Small Interview Project. It's really great to get local Canberra politicians actually showing an interest in small business, so I greatly appreciate your time and I'm looking forward to this interview.
Absolute pleasure.
So let me get into it. You've been in politics for a while. Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me your story.
Well, I grew up here in Canberra, originally from Sydney and then a small country town called Corindai, but moved here in 1975. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So that's where I spent the early part of my life, or the first 7 years. Coming to Canberra, my parents were in the public sector. Right. Dad worked for AGs, Mum was a teacher, and I went to Latham Primary, Ginninderra High and Copeland College just for a little while, because I left school to become a labourer when I was 16. And that, in many ways, gave me my life's opportunities, because the labouring, it was really hard work. It was character building. We were removing asbestos from public buildings around town, and that was when I became active as a union member about occupational health and safety, as you'd expect, working with asbestos. And that drew me into my union, the BWIU, and the Labor Party, because I wanted to make the laws better about occupational health and safety. So for me, it was quite a linear equation to go from, you know, wanting to make things better for workers and how to affect that change. So I joined the party when I was quite young, and really my experience unfolded from there. I have to say, I never thought I would end up being an elected representative. So that was an opportunity.
So that wasn't the initial sort of plan?
There was no plan. Even labouring was a way to earn good money when I was quite young. I didn't particularly aspire to do that work, but I loved non-traditional work for women. That really appealed to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, so this is a very non-traditional role, especially at that time.
My mum was a great role model. She was doing industrial design at the time.
Right.
At the now UC, but then CCAE in Belconnen, and she was always doing physical things around the garden, making furniture, landscaping. So I think she was a wonderful role model. So all I had in my head was I could do anything I wanted. Sure.
Okay, so I guess with that background, you've probably got a strong association or link with sort of the trade sector, you know, especially now.
Well, very much so. And in Canberra, so many people come to their politics through the public sector, even though, you know, I'm kind of stereotyped as a unionist. All of that work experience was pretty much in the private sector. We had public clients, like departments and agencies for whom we were doing the work, but we were contractors. I worked for contractors, and it was private sector all the way. So working for the union gave me a great insight into some of the challenges you know, small businesses face, particularly in the building and construction industry when they don't get paid on time.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big challenge. I guess you've always got a career to fall back on too, isn't it?
I ended up getting my scaffolder's licence, but I never worked as a scaffolder. I think that'd be pretty tough, but I was very proud of that credential.
No, it's good. I like that. I'm impressed with that. Look, let me get into some of my questions for you, Kate. Why do you think, based on, obviously you've talked to thousands and thousands of business owners over your political career, but why do you think people decide to go into business?
Look, I think it's because they want to be in control of their own destinies and their own life. I think a business has an opportunity not just to carry an idea into something tangible, but then to be able to take that where people want it to go, whether it's managing a known entity or being really innovative and taking it somewhere new. I think a lot of people don't realise how much hard work's involved.
No, definitely. It's a bit of a surprise for a lot of people. You probably answered this question a little bit with your introduction. Sort of, I was going to ask you about what made you decide on sort of the public life versus, you know, going into business or getting another job or something like that. But I guess it was a natural sort of progression along the way, wasn't it?
Look, it was, and as I said, there was no plan. For me, it was being drawn into things that inspired me, and the more I learnt about politics, the more, you know, I felt empowered by that and was able to, you know, it sounds quite cliched, but make a real difference in the work that I was doing. So it just continued to draw me in.
And I guess, you know, an unrelated question, but, you know, is there one sort of major highlight that you say you've made a difference in over your career?
Look, I think in the area of both sport policy, public policy associated with, you know, physical well-being, and I think also IT, both in opposition and government. There are ways that you can make an impact, but technology is an area that I've been interested in for a very long time.
I'll come back to that because I've got a good question about your technological background. What do you see, again, based on talking to people and based on sort of what you see out there, but what do you think is the biggest challenge that businesses face?
Look, I think having a stable environment, a stable economy, there are enough variables in business when businesses are trying to grow, where they're trying to access new markets, where they're trying to adapt to technological change.
Yep.
So that the best thing that can support that is a stable environment that's a strong, healthy economy around those small businesses.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the reasons why you get the major parties focusing on this understanding.
Yeah.
Small business does drive the economy, so getting the macroeconomic conditions right for small business to thrive is a critical part of modern public policy.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I noticed there was such a big increase in the focus on small businesses by both parties in the last election. Is that because of that realisation, do you think? Or
Look, I think it is. And I think also when you look at the proportion of small businesses in Australia compared to large businesses,
Yep.
when taxation revenue from business is a key part of how our
Yep.
economy functions, we've got to look after small
Absolutely.
business.
You
We've
want
got more small businesses than any other type of business in this country.
Yeah.
And a lot of policy gets made around the needs of big business, and
Sure.
I think there's a much stronger shift now to policy making sure that our small businesses can be the best they can be.
Yeah, and do you see that trend continuing sort of in subsequent future elections and things?
Look, I do, and it's manifesting itself in a variety of ways. I was involved in the innovation portfolio before the last election.
Yep.
And worked a lot with small businesses that were trying to break into export markets or
Right.
adapting old technologies or old technological methods of production and systems in their business to new ones. And we had a whole range of programs to help businesses do that.
Okay.
Not government telling them
Yeah.
what to do, but experienced private sector business advisors through Enterprise Connect coming into businesses and supporting them. And that
Yeah.
was very popular, not a fast thing, no overnights.
Yeah.
But supportive of business to take the step they need to take to survive and grow.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a major increase over the years in the level of tools and resources available to small business from the government, whether it be whichever party.
Yes.
But I think those things have developed. Business.gov.au is a pretty cool
Yeah.
website for people
Yeah.
to use, and there's a lot of resources, especially in Canberra. There's a lot of great expertise out there to actually go to. So that's good. Hope that trend does continue. And my final question for you, Kate, is what advice would you have for people considering going into business?
Look, get as much information as you can. Talk to business owners in that space if that's possible.
Sure.
But I remember years ago I did a business intenders course because I had what I thought was a bright idea on the side.
Yep.
And clearly it was not for me. I didn't need to start a business to do what I wanted to do.
Yep.
But that was an incredibly valuable day of my life because it gave me a sense of, the basics, cash flow issues,
Yep.
setting up marketing costs, advertising, and all of the main things, but potential bear pits
Yep.
for people who, particularly in Canberra, who may take a redundancy package and think, I'm going to do the business I always dreamed of.
Yep.
It's a really, treacherous time in many respects.
Absolutely.
Because such a high failure rate for new businesses in their first year.
Yep. Yep.
So do some kind of business intenders course and get to know the basics and understand the landscape and your potential
Definitely.
market.
No, great advice. I absolutely recommend that as well. And look, I guess one extra little question for you is I did notice that you had the innovation sort of portfolio and things that in that regards, and technology has been very strong part of your background. You're one of the first politicians to have a website, I believe, based on your own website. So tell me about that bit of innovation.
Well, there's a bit of a story behind it, so bear with me.
Yep.
But when I worked for the union, it was in some respects like a small business.
Right.
And we had an engineering undergrad who was helping us out as a union set up a LAN inside the, the office. And we sat next to each other and he sort of said, oh, this is what the internet is. And I was like, oh, that's going to change the world.
Yep.
So it grabbed me right from the start. And this is back in the early 90s when everyone was still,
Back in dial-up.
Yeah, certainly dial-up.
Yeah.
We got excited about ISDN and 64 kilobits
Yeah,
per second
yeah.
back then. Well, if you could afford the $30,000. But I'd done a lot of graphics and material for the union, and I would produce their newsletter.
Okay.
So I translated those skills to publishing online and some
Okay.
basic HTML
Yeah.
coding.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was going to change the world,
Yeah.
and of course it has.
Absolutely.
But in those early days, I thought the best thing I could do was have a presence
Mm-hmm.
online. And so I developed the website. I was doing some work for not-for-profit groups as well,
Yeah.
very early, brochureware.
Yeah.
And when I went into Parliament, of course I wanted to have a web presence. And I was astounded to know that A, I was the first, but two, back then they didn't even give members of Parliament a computer. So I bought my own computer,
Wow.
a big desktop. It was a Pentium. It cost
Yeah.
me about $5,000. I bought all the software I needed to do it, and I used PC Users Group to set up my first website.
Wow.
So a lot of history,
Yeah.
and we've come a long, long, long way.
So you're the
since
local
then.
go-to girl at Parliament House for website content and creation?
Look, there's still quite a few people that try to sit at the forefront of those trends.
Sure.
I hung on to doing it myself for a long time. I don't do that
Yeah.
anymore. I use editing tools like WordPress
Yep,
now
yep.
to host my material.
Yeah.
So we've had several incarnations, but I've
Okay.
had to let go a little too,
Yeah,
because
sure.
now it's just
Too
part
big.
of what we do,
Yeah.
not something extra.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I like that story. It's very interesting. So no regrets that you didn't go down the coding and website design career?
Look, there's a part of me I was asked once, what would I do if I wasn't doing what I'm doing? And my answer was tech startup,
Oh,
which
okay.
is a genuine sort of dream.
Sure.
To be part of something so new and so
Yeah.
exciting, and really leveraging the latest technological innovations.
Yeah.
I think it comes from a deep feeling I had, which I got from the construction
Yep.
industry. I could see in a very physical way how technological change was impacting people's jobs.
Right.
And for me, sitting underneath my interest in technologies, how can we put technology to work for us as a society, not against us?
Mm.
And there are negatives and positives in every part of change, and one of the things I've tried to do is to find the positives in technological change, economically, socially,
Yep.
culturally, and leverage that
Sure.
for some upside.
Excellent. Senator Kate Lundy, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for all the stories you told us.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your interest.
Great, thanks.